Hey guys, I'm Kevin Dillon here with Tom Westerholm. We're here to bring you a sports debate we were having this morning. We thought we'd bring it to all of you. Who was the biggest Boston area sports team acquisition this offseason, or in their respective offseasons? Boston teams added a lot of good players in their offseasons, whether it's the Celtics adding Gordon Hayward, Jason Tatum, Patriots adding Brandin Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, the Red Sox adding Chris Sale. A lot of really talented players. Tom is here to argue in favor of Gordon Hayward. I will argue in favor of Cooks and Chris Sale. I almost gave Tom Paul Posma for the Bruins, but we decided just don't even bother. So, Tom, just present your argument here. Why is Gordon Hayward the biggest acquisition by a Boston sports team this offseason?
Well, I want to start by saying that I'm woefully underprepared and underinformed for this debate. I know everything there is to know about Gordon Hayward and the Celtics. I know Brandin Cooks I probably would have spelled with an O, in Brandon. So, I want to let everybody know, full disclaimer, I am badly prepared for this. But I do have takes on Gordon Hayward, so let's get them. I think that Hayward is probably the most impactful for a few different reasons, and they aren't skill-wise, because you laid it out the case pretty well for Chris Sale and how he's arguably the best player, arguably the best player of the bunch to be acquired by a Boston team. Hayward's impact on the Celtics is going to be huge. He's a star small forward in a league where star small forwards are crucial. You need that versatility. You need that kind of guy who can play defense on multiple positions, who can do a lot of different things on offense. He shot almost 40% from three last year. That's huge. That'll provide spacing for Isaiah Thomas. And just kind of the fit with the team. He's going to make everybody else better by being as good as he is. And he's also, in basketball, it's just easier to impact a game just as one player. Hayward probably isn't as good as Sale. He's probably comparable to Cooks. But just the fact that there's 5 players on the floor at any given time, and Hayward is so good, that in itself is inherently really, really valuable. And I think, to me, that's one of the reasons why I would make him probably the biggest acquisition in a Boston offseason. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, well, just going back to Chris Sale here. Gordon Hayward is, where would you rank him among his position group in the NBA?
So that's a good question. You would call him a small forward, probably. He'll probably play some shooting guard. I don't think he'll play any power forward this season, or at least not much for the Celtics. But you would probably call him, a small forward. At that position, you got LeBron, you got Kevin Durant, you've got Giannis Antetokounmpo, you've got Kawhi Leonard, and then you start to kind of get into it a little bit. Then you have Paul George, and is he better than Paul George? He might be better than Paul George. It's really close. And then you could say that Jimmy Butler is a shooting guard, which is where I would kind of have him. That would be a debate as well. So I would put him 5th or 6th on the list of small forwards. And again, small forwards are a really crucial position in the NBA, because after that list, it starts to fall off. Then you start to get the Harrison Barnes, that kind of thing. So if you get a player who's on Hayward's level, where he is on that probably 2nd tier, or maybe 2.5 tier of NBA small forwards, he's right there. He's right in that group.
Right, and obviously the small forward being a really important position. You could say the same about both Brandin Cooks and Chris Sale. Top-level wide receivers are really hard to come by in the league. Patriots haven't really had one since Randy Moss. Julian Edelman has been great, and that shouldn't be understated. But, to get someone that's a true number one, Brandin Cooks is that guy. At least he can be that guy. He's only 23. He's coming off a year in which he had over 1,100 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. He's probably among the top 15 receivers in the league. And when you kind of map that out to how that would be in the NFL, every team starts 2 wide receivers. And so maybe let's say you put him at number 14 in the league. That's around number 7 small forward. It's kind of comparable. Yeah. Then you look at Chris Sale, and Chris Sale is the best starter in the American League this year. He has 200 strikeouts already. He had an all-star season last year. He started the all-star game for the American League, and he had 233 strikeouts over the entire year. So 200 strikeouts is pretty remarkable.
That is, in fact, good and not bad.
It's not bad, yeah. Chris Sale is essentially I'd say probably the biggest reason why the Red Sox are currently in first place in the American League. He's been so dominant for them. He's been, and it's funny because when he starts, the Red Sox haven't exactly had great offense, which leads to his record not being perfect. But He's having an incredible season. He's got a 2.48 ERA. He's been an elite starter, and that's really what you were hoping for when you got Chris Sale. Of course, Chris Sale's in a little bit of a different position in his career. He's probably let's say in the middle of his prime. I'd say Hayward and Cooks are both kind of starting their prime.
Right at the beginning of it, yeah.
Yeah, like Brandin Cooks is 23 years old. You're going to have him at least for a couple more years, and then you have a chance to sign him afterward. Then you look at Hayward. I mean, you've got him for the next 4 years, I believe.
4 years. 3 years, and then he's got a player option that he might exercise, and he's 27 right now. So,
right,
yeah.
And so I mean, it's you've got Chris Sale for plenty of time, but I mean, it's almost like you're getting the back half of his great years, and then you would expect him to kind of tail off, especially with his delivery when he gets like a little bit further into his 30s. I mean, it's tough to really knock the Red Sox for getting a 28-year-old starter. But I mean, in the position
and to be clear, nobody's knocking them. Like,
right.
These are all phenomenal acquisitions. Chris Sale's amazing, Brandin Cooks is amazing, and obviously Hayward is amazing as well. So we're not knocking any of these teams. We're just debating which one could be the best. But anyway.
Yeah, no, I mean, the only team we're knocking is the Boston Bruins, who only have Paul Postma to show for their offseason.
Sorry, Bruins.
Sorry, Bruins. But yeah, no, I mean, it's really interesting. And see, one thing we talked about a little bit earlier was how does this impact each team's championship chances? Right. And, I mean, Gordon Hayward, I mean, obviously, he significantly impacts the Celtics.
He does, and especially with all the news with Kyrie Irving and the way that, we don't know what the Cavaliers are going to look like next season. They might be, the same team. If they keep Irving, they might take a significant downgrade. It's really tough to tell. So that's a huge impact, to bring in a player who can help you potentially win a championship, who can potentially get you there maybe next season. That's huge, and he is that kind of talent. He is that kind of fit on this team. He's just going to be such a big upgrade. He's going to make Thomas better, and this is a team that was already the number 1 seed in the East. They already made it to the Eastern Conference Finals where they just got smacked. They won't get smacked this year. Even if the Cavaliers run back the same team, they'll still have LeBron James, so they'll still be the favorites. But the Celtics aren't going to get punked this time. Like, they're really good, and a huge part of that is Hayward and the versatility he brings. There's a real argument to be made that the Celtics, who were the number 1 seed last year, just picked up their best player in Hayward. So that's going to be really intriguing to watch, and that's another notch on his belt as well, I think. Yeah.
So let's say if we're saying that Hayward puts them at least in a good chance to make it to the NBA Finals. I mean, they'll at least have, like, the expectation is the Eastern Conference Finals at this point. Yeah. But for, let's say, Chris Sale, does Chris Sale bring the Red Sox to World Series level? Right now, it doesn't necessarily look like he'll be able to do that. I mean, there are better teams in the league. You've got the Astros, obviously, have been excellent this year, and who knows if what happens if they face the Dodgers. But I mean, the Red Sox, they look like they are going to be. They have a good chance to make the playoffs here. They're in first place in the AL East, but Chris Sale might not be the defining piece that brings them over the hump. So I'd say he gets if we're giving a grade for that category, he gets probably a B+ to an A-, but sure, it's not necessarily at Hayward's level. Cooks is kind of similar in the fact that Cooks single-handedly is not going to bring the Patriots a Super Bowl, but he's on a 53-man roster that already had Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and just won the Super Bowl. And so, they're not getting the Patriots did not get their best player when they got Brandin Cooks. However, they are getting a player that gives them an element that they haven't had really since Randy Moss. And when they had Randy Moss, they went 16-0 and made the Super Bowl. So it's making a great team greater, and that's I think maybe an impact that might get overlooked here when we look at what the rest of the Celtics and the Red Sox did with their offseason acquisitions. But I mean, that's pretty significant, and it helps kind of push the Patriots forward in the future. Like, let's say if Tom Brady were to retire in the middle of this season, and Jimmy Garoppolo takes over, and some of the other, like Rob Gronkowski's injury history is not good. Let's say he were to step away from the game soon. The Patriots would still have a top-level 23-year-old receiver that they have under contract that they can keep for the future, someone that Bill Belichick loves. So I mean, overall, it seems like it's a great acquisition for the Patriots, and maybe it gets a little overlooked when we have Hayward and Cooks here. So, but it's certainly an interesting debate.
So that's really an interesting way to look at it too. Is that Cooks might take the Patriots from an already elite team to an elite team. I mean, I'm not sure what the word is there, but to a team that's even high on an even higher level. That's certainly worth considering. If this team goes from a Super Bowl where they almost lost. I mean, they were behind by so much at one point, 28-3. To take a team that was really on the ropes there, but still came through, to maybe turning them into just a dominant, no questions asked kind of team, that's a completely different conversation. And I think that the interesting counter with Hayward is he doesn't take the Celtics to that. He doesn't take them from a good team to an elite team necessarily. But what he does do is he changes their culture. He changes them as a potential destination. If Anthony Davis was to say, I will re-sign with these teams, and the Celtics were one of them, it would be because of the core that they've created with Thomas and Horford and Hayward. And that he fits both the current timeline where they're trying to win games and the future rebuilding timeline where they're trying to build for the future, because he's that age, he's that kind of an acquisition, he's that kind of a talent. So that's really interesting as well, is that while Sale obviously gives the Red Sox a postseason threat. He's one of the best pitchers in the majors. Cooks could take the Patriots from an elite team to a super elite team. Hayward could change the culture of the Celtics as a destination, and so it's all these different these different pluses in their favor. I think for Hayward, I think that's one of the biggest ones, is that down the line, if there is another player like an Anthony Davis, like, I don't know, the examples are tough to come up with because you don't know who's going to be disgruntled next. But he makes the Celtics a team that other players would look at and be like, man, that would be a fun team to go to.
Yeah, and I think that's something that maybe exists in the NBA and doesn't necessarily exist in the other sports. Like, by signing Chris Sale, it's not going to attract a whole bunch of free agents. Whoever's going to pay those free agents a lot of money will attract those free agents, And it's the same thing in football. Like, obviously getting a good player helps attract free agents. Like, players will sign with the Patriots, like, especially toward the end of their career, because they know they're playing with Tom Brady and they have a chance to go win a Super Bowl. I mean, we saw Chris Long do it last year. But at the same time, like, it's not this this idea of like, we'll join stars and we'll have a chance to really compete against the LeBrons and the Kevin Durant's of the world. So it's maybe something that it kind of exists in the NBA. It doesn't necessarily exist in the other sports, and so it makes it tough to compare.
It does, but that's also if I may say so, it's a notch in Hayward's favor that he's able to command that kind of that kind of respect, that kind of thing is available to him. That where it isn't necessarily available to Cooks or Sale.
For sure. And so I think at this point we've probably exhausted all of the debates here. We did not get into Paul Postma. Maybe we'll save that for the next video about how the seventh defenseman really helps the Bruins reach that next level.
I'll contribute to that conversation quite a bit.
Absolutely. But thanks everyone for watching. I saw a bunch of you posted things in the comments. We'll take a look at those after this video and see what you guys decided.
And make sure to leave your orders in the comments as well. Right? Who do you think is the top three in terms of impact between Hayward and Sale and Cooks?
I guess actually, real quick right here, what would you have as your top three order?
So if we're talking as players, I would go, I don't know anything about Cooks.
Okay.
But if we're going as players individually, I guess I would go Sale, Hayward, Cooks. That's just a guess. If we're talking about impact and in terms of the future, in terms of the present, I'm going to go Hayward, Cooks, Sale.
I think if I were to do both of those, I think it would be the same for me. After this debate, I was leaning between Cooks and Hayward, but no, I think you convinced me. So I'd say I'd probably go Sale, Hayward, Cooks for both of them. I think Chris Sale at this point, I think he does have an advantage where we've already seen him and we've seen what he can do to the team, but he's so dominant and he's so good. And he's going to probably win the Cy Young this year. I don't necessarily think that Hayward or Cooks is going to win the MVP. So,
hey man, no, you're right.
Yeah. So, but in the end, I mean, it's three great acquisitions for Boston sports teams. Makes our jobs fun.
It does.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, for watching. Be sure to check back on MassLive.com/sports because we've got /Patriots /Celtics, but overall is a general sports discussion. So check back for all sorts of coverage throughout the year, and thanks for watching.